Welcome to our podcast on immigration to the Netherlands and a comparison with the United States. In this podcast, we give an overview of the most important rules and procedures for people who want to move to the Netherlands or obtain Dutch citizenship, and we compare it to the situation in the US. The hosts discuss topics such as the requirements for naturalization in the Netherlands, the integration process and integration exams, different types of residence permits, recent changes in immigration policy, differences between immigration to the Netherlands and the United States, historical context of immigration in both countries. They will discuss how immigration options for Dutch nationals to the U.S. differ from those for Americans to the Netherlands, including special arrangements such as the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty. It is important to note that immigration laws change regularly, both in the Netherlands and the U.S. The information in this podcast is based on the most recent data, but may change in the future. We therefore recommend that viewers always consult official sources for the most up-to-date information. Whether you're considering moving to the Netherlands or the US, or just want to learn more about the immigration systems of both countries, this podcast provides a good starting point. Let's start with an overview of the basics of Dutch immigration and how they compare to the US system.
All right, so you want to become Dutch.
It's not as easy as just developing a taste for stroopwafels.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Especially with all the recent changes and proposed changes to immigration policies, it can feel like you're trying to hit a moving target, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things that can feel pretty overwhelming if you're not, immersed in it all the time.
Absolutely. But that's why we're doing this deep dive to break it all down, and we've got some excellent sources to help us do just that.
Yeah, the sources you found are great, I've got to say.
The first one actually dives right into that whole idea of Dutch immigration policies always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
It basically says, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Which I guess is good life advice in general. But yeah, it's true. Policies change all the time, so it's like, where do you even begin?
Exactly. I mean, How do you even try to navigate that?
This source makes it really clear, I think, that the most important thing is to have the most up-to-date, reliable information.
So folks, no relying on outdated blog posts or word of mouth. Always double-check with the official sources.
You can't go wrong with that approach.
Now, our second source is actually a friendly guide to becoming Dutch. It lays out all the main paths to becoming a true Nederlander, as they say.
It does a nice job of breaking down the different routes.
And then our third source, this was super interesting, especially for our American listeners, because it compares U.S. and Dutch immigration systems. And let's just say there's a certain treaty we'll be getting into that might have some people wondering, why didn't I think of this sooner?
Yeah, that treaty always sparks some interesting conversation. But let's step back for a second. When you look at how the Netherlands structures its pathways to citizenship, it's actually pretty fascinating. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. They've got options, you see. You've got naturalization, the option procedure, and by law. Each one's a little different.
Okay, so multiple doors leading to that coveted Dutch passport.
Yeah.
Let's start with the one that, at least on the surface, sounds the most straightforward: naturalization. You live there for a bit, you naturalize, right? Simple.
Well, on the surface, it sounds simple, but like most things, it's a little more nuanced than that. It's not quite as easy as just unpacking your bags, settling in, and then bam, you're Dutch.
So there's a catch. What's the fine print?
This source, it actually highlights this really specific residency requirement. 5 years, to be exact. And the key here is it's got to be uninterrupted. 5 years, boom, right there in the Netherlands.
5 years. So it's not all just canals and windmills then, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What else makes this path unique?
Well, this is where it gets interesting, right? It's about really demonstrating that you want to be a part of Dutch society, that you're committed to more than just, living there. And a big part of that is something called the Civic Integration Exam. It's a requirement that often throws people off.
The Civic Integration Exam. Okay, this is already sounding more intense than just a basic language test.
Right, it's got some weight to it. And you're right to pick up on that. It's way more than just speaking Dutch. We're talking delving into their culture, their values, understanding how their society actually functions.
So it's about making sure you're not just living in the Netherlands, but that you kind of get it. You understand the rules of the game.
Exactly. It's about really understanding the Netherlands beyond just the superficial level. They want to know you're serious about it.
Wow. So 5 years of residency plus passing this very uniquely Dutch exam. What else do aspiring citizens need to, check off the list?
One more crucial thing the guide stresses is a clean legal record. And I mean squeaky clean. It emphasizes a stable life, a law-abiding life, especially in those 5 years leading up to when you apply.
Okay, so it's about proving your character, too, showing you'll be a responsible member of Dutch society. That's intense when you really think about it. But I do have to ask, what about all our American listeners out there? Because our third source hints that there might be a bit of a fast track for them.
Ah, yes. We've got to talk about the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty. They call it DAFT for short.
DAFT. Okay, is this like some secret handshake deal that only Americans get?
It's not a secret handshake, but it definitely offers some advantages to U.S. citizens, yeah.
Like what?
Well, remember that whole 5-year residency requirement for naturalization we talked about? Well, with this DAFT treaty, American entrepreneurs can actually get a residence permit in just 1 year if they invest a certain amount.
Hold on. 1 year versus 5. That's a massive difference.
It is, and it really shows you how differently the Netherlands and the U.S. approach immigration, particularly when it comes to entrepreneurs.
So how much do Americans have to invest to take advantage of DAFT?
It's only $4,500.
$4,500?
Yeah.
That's pretty accessible, actually. I'm guessing the U.S. doesn't make it quite that easy for Dutch entrepreneurs, huh?
You already know the answer to that. The amount a Dutch entrepreneur would need to invest to get a similar visa in the U.S. is way higher, which makes things much tougher. The sources really highlight that contrast.
It's almost like two totally different philosophies, isn't it? The Netherlands seems to be saying, hey, if you're serious about contributing, we're willing to welcome you in faster.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important takeaway here. The DAFT Treaty, it's not just about paperwork and visas. It's a reflection of a larger openness to American entrepreneurship.
Okay, so we've got the time advantage with DAFT, and then a lower financial barrier to entry. Anything else that makes it stand out?
Remember how we were talking about the civic integration exam and how it's a key part of showing that commitment to the Netherlands? Well, DAFT has something to say about that, too.
Don't tell me Americans get a free pass on the integration exam, do they?
Not a total free pass. However, under DAFT, Americans aren't initially required to know Dutch. The source was very clear about that. Of course, learning the language is always a good thing and it's encouraged, but it's not a barrier to entry.
Wow, that's a game changer. Just imagine the pressure of having to learn a new language while also trying to, navigate a new business in a whole new country. That's a lot to handle.
For sure. And again, it's another major difference between how the Netherlands and the U.S. approach things. The U.S. often has very strict English language requirements for visas, which can be a major obstacle, especially for entrepreneurs.
So with DAFT, the financial bar is lower, the linguistic bar is lower. It does seem like the Netherlands is really rolling out the welcome mat for Americans. Anything else about this treaty that's worth mentioning?
One more important point. Under DAFT, you can bring your immediate family along with you.
Oh, wow. That's huge. It's not always a given with these immigration policies.
It speaks volumes about how the Netherlands views building a diverse and inclusive society, They understand that family plays a huge role in how well someone integrates.
It's really interesting when you think about it like that, because we're not just talking about individuals putting down roots, we're talking about generations of families. Imagine the impact that could have over time.
It's fascinating, isn't it? You've got families, businesses, all adding their own unique perspectives to the cultural landscape. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we should probably touch on that third path to citizenship that we mentioned earlier, the option procedure.
Right. It did kind of feel like we were moving on from that. So the option procedure, what makes it unique?
This one is designed for people who already have existing ties to the Netherlands.
So like people with Dutch ancestry, like maybe their grandparent was born in Amsterdam or something.
Exactly. Or for people who were actually born in the Netherlands but left before they could claim citizenship. It's basically acknowledging that being Dutch isn't just about, geography, but that it can be about heritage, family history, things like that.
I like that. It acknowledges those personal connections, and even those historical ties. So if naturalization is like the main highway to citizenship, the option procedure sounds more like a scenic route.
It's about honoring the past while also looking toward building a future in the Netherlands.
It's like those stories you hear, about people discovering they're actually like royalty or something because of some long-lost relative. Except in this case, it's discovering you've got a path to Dutch citizenship.
Well, maybe not quite as glamorous as being royalty, but yeah, I see what you mean. But, there's actually one more route to Dutch citizenship that we haven't talked about yet. by law.
Oh, right. That one sounded kind of mysterious to me.
Mm.
Like you stumble across some obscure law from like the 1600s and boom, you're suddenly Dutch.
It's not usually quite that dramatic, although it would be kind of cool if it worked that way.
Right. So how does it actually work?
It's for more specific, unique circumstances. These by-law situations, they don't happen every day. The sources mention it's often used for people who've done really extraordinary things for the Netherlands.
Okay, so think like groundbreaking scientific discoveries, curing diseases, winning Olympic gold medals for the Netherlands.
Yeah. Or, maybe someone who's made huge contributions to the arts, something like that. It's almost like, the Netherlands saying, "You're so awesome, we're making you one of us."
Sounds like an honorary citizenship almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Recognizing those really exceptional individuals, it's cool to see how they've got this whole other path that doesn't fit into those more, traditional categories.
It shows you how much thought they put into this, right?
Yeah.
They're not just like checking boxes. They're really trying to find people who are going to make the Netherlands a better, more interesting place.
It makes you think, too. We've been talking a lot about the process, the steps, the requirements, like the how-tos of becoming Dutch. But we should probably take a step back and ask, why would someone even want to become Dutch in the first place?
Okay, getting philosophical on me now. I like it. But you're right. Why does all of this even matter? What's the big picture?
It's easy to get caught up in the details and the paperwork, but the benefits of Dutch citizenship go way beyond that. It's not just about getting a Dutch passport. We've got to talk about the EU.
Right. It's like that saying, if you're going to dream, dream big. Or in this case, if you're going to get citizenship, get EU citizenship. Talk about a 2-for-1 deal.
I know, right? And it's not just symbolic. I mean, with Dutch citizenship, you literally have the freedom to go and live, work, study, even retire anywhere in the European Union.
No more visa applications, no more jumping through bureaucratic hoops.
Yeah.
Imagine, Monday, you're having breakfast in Amsterdam. Tuesday, you're grabbing a croissant in Paris. Wednesday, you're sipping espresso in Rome.
See, now you're getting it. And that's just the beginning. Having that Dutch passport also means you get visa-free travel to a ton of countries all around the world.
So those spontaneous weekend trips to Bali or Peru are suddenly a lot more doable. Huge perk for anyone who loves to travel.
I know. It really does open up a world of possibilities, but it goes even deeper than that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think about it. Choosing to become a citizen of another country, that's a huge decision for anyone. It's about way more than just, paperwork and legal status.
It's about feeling like you belong, right?
Right.
Planting your flag and saying, this is home, even if it's thousands of miles away from where you grew up.
Exactly. Especially in a world that's so interconnected, that feeling of belonging, of choosing where you want to put down roots. It means even more.
It's like nowadays, citizenship isn't just something you're born into, It's something you actively choose. You choose the place and the community that feels right for you, the place where you feel like you can contribute and thrive.
And the Netherlands seems to get that. They're not just handing out passports like candy. They want people who are going to, add to their society, become a part of it.
It's interesting how the sources talked about this idea of integration, because it's not just a one-way street. It's not just about, the individual adapting to Dutch society. It's also about Dutch society embracing everything that makes newcomers unique.
It's about creating a richer, more dynamic culture, not about erasing differences, but celebrating them.
Exactly. And I think that's something that gets lost sometimes in conversations about immigration. It's not about everyone becoming the same. It's about how all of those unique experiences and perspectives can, weave together to create something even stronger and more vibrant than before.
It's like that old saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think that really applies here. And with that, it seems like we've come full circle in our deep dive into becoming Dutch. We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started with those 3 main paths to citizenship naturalization, option procedure, and by law, each one with its own quirks and requirements. And I think we really got a sense of how the Netherlands views immigration, especially compared to the U.S. when you look at the DAF Treaty.
And we went beyond just the logistics of it all, too. We looked at some of the bigger questions, like what does it really mean to become Dutch in today's world? What are the benefits, but also the challenges of navigating different cultures?
It's been quite a journey. We've gone from visa applications and residency requirements to these big questions about cultural identity, What does it even mean to truly belong somewhere new?
And that's what I love about these deep dives. We're not just scratching the surface. We're really getting into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. It's like we keep peeling back layers of the onion. We started with the simple question, how do I become Dutch? And now we're at, what does it even mean to be Dutch, especially in today's world?
It's a big question, for sure. And it's one that the sources, they gave us a lot to think about.
They really did. And it's got me thinking, what would the ideal path to citizenship look like?
Oh, wow. Okay, so not just for the Netherlands, you mean, but like for any country.
Exactly. Like if you could design the perfect system for how people become citizens of a new place, what would that even look like?
That's a great question, and a tough one. Would you say it should be about how much money someone can invest? Or their language skills? What about their knowledge of the culture or how strong their family ties are?
Right. Or maybe it's a combination of all those things.
Yeah.
But then how do you find that balance? How do you encourage people to integrate while still respecting all the things that make them unique?
It's a tricky thing, but it's something that every country has to grapple with.
It really is. And I think it goes beyond just immigration policies, too. It makes you think about identity in a whole new light.
It does, because at the end of the day, it's about more than just getting a passport, right? It's about finding a place where you feel like you can truly belong, a place where you can contribute and thrive.
I think that's a great place to leave it with that thought. It's a journey, this whole idea of belonging and finding your place in the world. And it's one that we'll keep exploring. So until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep diving deep,